Okay, let's get started with the next session. So I'm very, very excited to present our next speaker. And this time we're going on a journey to one of the most dynamic regions in the world when it comes to economic growth. And I would say the most dynamic region when it comes to growth in the steel industry. So this country is planning to grow steel production from 150 million tons today to a very impressive 215 million tons in 2030. But with this volume surge, this strong growth, of course, the question becomes more urgent. How is that growth going to take place? What about decarbonization in this context? So the journey is going to India, and I'm very happy to introduce to you Mr. Deshpande. Please come on stage. Please give him a warm applause. Mr. Deshpande is looking back at a very successful career at Tata Steel, working in the manufacturing unit. He's an expert in iron ore, coking coal, and many, many other things. Today he works as a strategic advisor for BigMint, which is a price reporting agency in India and one of the leading ones. And
yes,
I'm very happy and looking forward to your presentation about this very dynamic market, India. The stage is yours.
Thank you. So thank you, Middlesex, for giving me the opportunity to speak. So I have something to tell you, which is about India. The topic which was suggested to me was how India is changing its raw material mix to address the decarbonization requirements. The implicit assumption in the question is that yes, India will change its raw material mix and in which direction it is going. So I want to analyze that as well in the presentation. So 2 points, primarily speaking, for me to speak to you. One is India as a nation, what efforts is it making to decarbonize itself and how far has it come in its efforts? That's one part. And the second one is how Indian steel industry is actually responding to these efforts. So I am an advisor to BigMint. BigMint is a trusted platform of price reporting, market intelligence, and consulting consulting commodities. Yeah. So has India seen a change in the raw material mix? This is the question which we propose to talk about. But right in the beginning, I will analyze this question in the end. But it's changing is primarily its energy mix rather than the raw material mix. And that's how it's planning to achieve the targets for the decarbonization. So there are 4 important targets for India as a country. Energy emission intensity to be reduced by 33% by 2030, 50% by 2047, and net zero by 2070. Now, this is slightly different from the standards which Europe is applying. Europe would like to get to net zero by 2050. So we have probably starting at a very high level. So we have a grace of 20 years. The next important target for the nation is 500 gigawatts, which is about 50% of the energy requirements of the nation, renewable energy by 2030. This is the second goal at a national level. The third one is reduce carbon emission by 1 billion tons with respect to 2005. 2005, incidentally, is a base year for all these goals. And create additional carbon sink of 2.5 billion tons. So this is something which the nation has proposed and pursuing. How is the steel industry within this gamut responding? So I have primarily, steel industry has looked upon as technology as the enabler in this particular field. So to start with, in 2005, it had 425 tons of carbon dioxide per million US dollars GDP on PPP basis. This was in 2005. And then it proposes to bring it down to 33%. Steel industry accounts for about 7% of the carbon dioxide emission. We can work out how much is the contribution of steel industry as a result. Now, before we go to steel decarbonization actions that companies are taking, I just want to paint a context for the Indian steel industry. It's about 2% of the national GDP and about 7% of the carbon dioxide emission. It has the challenge currently of rapid growth. The capacity has to go up to meet the requirements of the economy from current 150 million tons to almost 250 million tons in the next 5-6 years. That's the kind of a growth that we are foreseeing. It has to be cost competitive. It has capital and technology requirements which are somewhat unmet. And there is no scrap available. So these are the, let's say, the constraints in which the steel industry is currently working. Steel industry is growing at the rate of roughly economy is growing at the rate of 6%, and steel industry also is growing at the rate of about 6%. So the approach which the steel makers in India seem to have taken. Now, there have been decisions in the last 10 years since the goals were announced. There were decisions about expansion using blast furnace route, which were put on hold for 2, 3, 4 years, and later on the hold was released, and India has chosen to go the blast furnace way. Now, blast furnace way is the first one. It has emission intensity of 2.08. And the goal is that we need to go down and down on the emission intensity. So there are options available, that best available technology, BF, BOF, plus carbon capturing. So that can take up to 0.61 emission intensity. Scrap-based electric arc furnace, that can take it to 0.53. DRI is the directly reduced iron. That's something which is almost 50% of Indian steel starts with DRI, actually speaking. So the DRI and EAF combined together along with natural gas. Currently, India uses coal as the fuel or the reductant. So if you switch over to natural gas, it will become 1.38 emission intensity. With the coal, the emission intensity is close to 3, actually speaking. So that's the reason why there are shifts that are likely to take place. And the companies which are using this technology, for example, JSW Utkal, which is going to set up a 13.2 million ton plant in the eastern coast of India, is following the best available technology and is targeting 2.08 as the emission intensity in its design. Tata Steel is looking at CCUS plant to be set up in Kalinganagar, a trial plant. So that's how Tata Steel is responding. Tata Steel also has tried to inject hydrogen in the blast furnace. Now, the easiest way to decarbonize is to substitute carbon by hydrogen. So hydrogen injection in the blast furnace was attempted in Jamshedpur, and they had a 4-day trial. So how the equipment performs, how the hydrogen injection process will work, all those technological, let's say, trials, they've been taken. So and it has created a promise for going forward. Scrap is not available, so therefore there is no great point in talking about scrap-based technology. Importing scrap, there are no scrap available in the imported market also, and becomes very expensive, not cost competitive. So the ArcelorMittal in India also is looking for a natural gas-based DRI plant. So some of these big companies in India, they're looking at the steel making routes, examining, and associated carbon emission intensities are being looked at, and that's how the choices are being made for the expansion. We also have been seriously looking at using hydrogen in the DRI process. So the classical DRI process by Midrex is iron ore and natural gas meet each other, and then you get a directly reduced iron. But instead of natural gas, if you can inject hydrogen, then you can actually get rid of a large amount of carbon dioxide emission. The emission intensity will come to 0.67 only. If you add to that a carbon capturing unit, then emission intensity can drop to 0.41. So why I am giving this table, many of you would know this, is that this is a guiding table for investments which are going to happen in India and as we go forward. The smelting reduction Hisrana process, which Tata Steel's own company in Netherlands is actually, this should be read as a 1.35, 2.35 is a mistake. So that's one option which is available. So there will be some trial plants which will be set up in Kalinganagar in Orissa using Hisrana process. So the companies intend to learn the technologies that they have not practiced for long and they are not widely available elsewhere. And that's how they propose to go forward. India's expansion from 150 million tons to 250 million tons by end of 2031 or so is not going to stop there. It is expected to go to 450 million tons by 2047. Looking at the growth in economy as well as the per capita steel consumption of the Indians, which is currently low. It's around 80 or 85 currently. World average is close to 160, 170. So we're targeting at 170 kg steel consumption per capita. So this is the sort of a broad outline as to how the march towards the decarbonization in Indian steel industry is actually doing. There are a few other initiatives which need to be mentioned. There is a national policy for scrapping vehicles, which was not there earlier. So the developing country, we didn't have a policy. People would scrap their vehicles at any point in time. So now cars need to be scrapped after 20 years, commercial vehicles need to be scrapped after 15 years. So we believe that by this scrapping policy, a large amount of steel will get recycled and an internal generation of scrap will also take place. So that's one, let's say, direction that the government is providing. The companies are trying to organize themselves for scrap collection and scrap processing. They are setting up scrap processing facilities at many locations in India. There are some plants which are using coal-based methane. Coal-based methane is arising as you mine coal. And if it is not used anyway, methane is going to go into the atmosphere because it is open cast mining or the mines are open to the atmosphere. So if we can pressurize and take this methane out, that's one way of actually absorbing the useful energy, useful carbon available. And the next point is about a hydrogen mission. These are the government level initiatives. They have set up a national green hydrogen mission, which has allocated a large amount of funds for developing the hydrogen technology in India. So these, I think, I touched upon them. So some of the other points worth mentioning is items 6 and 7. Securing and using about 1,000 megawatts of green power is an initiative by ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel in India. Allocating $600 million for green hydrogen is by Jindal Steel. Internal carbon pricing of $20 per ton is the initiative taken by JSW. Hydrogen and DRI 500 megawatts green hydrogen plant initiative is being taken by the government of India. And so on. So efforts are being made. So status as it looks now is in 2025, we are about 2.5 tons of carbon dioxide per ton of steel made on an average basis all over India. And the response, we expect to go to 2.2 by 30 and gradually march to 2047 and net zero by 2070. The initiative taken by the government of India last year has been to do star rating for public procurement of green steel. So Government of India itself is the largest consumer of steel in India. So when it wants to buy steel, it would like to buy steel from a 5-star company first, then 4-star, and then 3-star. They don't want to buy steel from anybody who is making less than 3-star. That's the policy that they've taken. So therefore, it's in a way pushing the industry, pushing the manufacturing companies to improve on their carbon emission and meet these requirements, meet these 5-star and 4-star requirements. So there is now, you can say, a race or a desperate movement from the managements to get into 4-star and 5-star ratings in India. And therefore, there is a lot of investment taking place. So now, unlike Europe, it's to reduce the carbon emission in India is not as difficult as it is in Europe, because we are at a high level, something like 3.2, 3.1 at some point in time, and now coming to 2.5. So we are very high level. So bringing it down is not so difficult at this point in time. It doesn't require great technology, it doesn't require great investment, it just requires efficiency improvement processes like coke dry quenching, the TRT machines, and whatever waste heat recovery processes, etc. So we'll actually get there. So these are some of the low carbon dioxide steel making projects in the pipeline. I would just like to mention the smelting reduction plus CCS. Ambition is to launch at an industrial scale by 2030 by Tata Steel. Is sort of compared with the similar initiatives taken by the other manufacturers in the world. So how far have we come in terms of achievements of the Indians' decarbonization strategy? The renewable energy capacity is at 46.52% of the target, which was kept at in 2030. So we have already reached 30% renewable energy capacity. So we just have to get another 15%, and large investments are getting made for renewable energy. Emission intensity has been reduced by 36% with respect to 2005. The target in 2030 was 33%. So we have done better compared to the national targets. Forestation and carbon sink has been created. Primary energy consumption per capita is low. I want to make this point here is that compared to the world average of around 78 gigajoules energy consumption per capita, India is already at a very low energy usage. In all probability, the energy usage in India will actually go up for the people. And therefore, we just have to be watchful that people who are going to go up in their energy consumption use renewable energy for their growth. And in this context, the initiative by the Government of India to have a solar panel on every household is something which is taking us in this direction. The other relevant point that needs to be made is the mix of BF, BOF steel and EAF, IF steel in India is already at 50-50%. This is another case that the EAF, IF steel, which is 54% of India's steel production, is using, most of it is using directly reduced iron. And currently directly reduced iron is consuming almost, is emitting almost 3 tons of carbon dioxide per ton of steel. So which is high, but which can be easily checked in by changing the process and getting use of, making use of natural gas and making use of hydrogen, we can actually bring it down. So this is a easy to sort of capture activity in India. It will just means that a large number of distributed small steel plants all over India, they will have to convert themselves into natural gas based or hydrogen based. And the Green Hydrogen Commission, which is being set up by the Government of India, is actually heading in that direction. I just want to give a flair as to how the raw material consumption is moving in the Indian steel industry. So you would notice that there is no great change actually that is taking place. The expected movement that we move from iron ore to scrap, because that's something which is pre-prepared material and less carbon dioxide intensive. But that's not what is actually happening in India. Maybe it is actually because of the context in which the Indian steel industry is operating. Scrap is not available, scrap is very expensive, and iron ore is abundantly available. The trouble with Indian steel industry is iron ore is of a poor quality. When I say poor quality, it has got a very high alumina in its contents, almost 7% alumina, which is currently in use. And at 7% alumina, if you want to make hot metal, if you want to make steel, the slag rates go very high, in excess of 400, close to 500. At that high slag rate, the carbon consumption in the steel plants actually goes up. And therefore, we are already reading figures of 2.2, 2.3 so far. We are not as good figures as 1.8, 1.9, which are being looked at in European steel plants. That's the primary reason. Our coal also is a high ash coal. So we have to get over these issues. And the way to get over these issues in India appears to be going to DRI way, make more and more DRI, change the DRI making from coal to natural gas, and subsequently from natural gas to hydrogen, as and when the hydrogen technology becomes established. And that's how I think we actually intend to hit the 2047 target. For 2030 target, there is no significant change either in raw materials. The significant change is only in the energy mix. A large part of the energy is going to come from the renewables, and therefore it will have less CO2 emission, and therefore this CO2 emission per ton of steel will also go down. So here also I just want to bring to your attention that there is no major change with respect to scrap consumption. It's proportionally they're about the same. Really speaking, as what was in 2024 and 2030, they're about the same in proportion, really speaking, very minor changes. So the important point that I want to leave behind before we go forward is that raw materials that Indian steel industry consumes give it a disadvantage with respect to decarbonization efforts. Also give it an opportunity also. I'm not saying it's only permanent disadvantage, but you require technology to deal with those raw materials. And technology is something which probably is a solution for the Indian steel industry. Raw material is not a lever available to Indian steel industry to decarbonize. The lever is probably the technology. This is one point. Renewable energy mix in the energy consumption is going up, and the government of India is actually doing a large amount of effort in this direction, and we are actually hitting the targets. This is a second way of going forward. The technology development for using hydrogen, for using CCUS technology, carbon capture technology is still not available in India. India is actually looking at Europe and European technology suppliers to actually make their impact there. And there is a small but subtle shift which is happening, which is using biofuels, biogas at many, many small places. This is the way in which the Indian steel industry is trying to move towards decarbonization. And it has come from 2.8, 2.9 to 2.2 now, 2.5 now, to go to 2.2. And maybe in the 2047, with use of these technologies, it expects to go less than 1.8. So that's the way the direction moves like. I would like to thank Metals Hub for giving me the opportunity. I had some interesting presentations that also I learned from. I hope whatever I described to you, the report that I made to you about Indian steel industry, actually helps you to look at it in context of the Indian raw materials, etc., and also helps you to examine how India is moving forward towards decarbonization. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for this very interesting presentation, taking us on a journey to India, which seems to me is like a different planet compared to here in Europe. So we hear that really bold investment decisions are being taken.
Yes.
And looking back at the past, everyone always believed India will grow fast. There will be a lot of investment in infrastructure. But it took quite a while and has been going at a relatively slow pace. But now
it is catching up.
I have really a feeling that India is booming. And that's why I would call this a different planet. So we have a few minutes for some questions from the audience. So anyone here would like to ask Mr. Deshpande any question?
Please. Yeah.
Yeah, I will stop in my question, but I think I could just ask them directly. You mentioned hydrogen as like one of the routes in the future. I mean, hydrogen is also energy intensive to produce, like electrolysis or methane as the route. Can you share perhaps some insights on what are the path towards hydrogen production?
Yeah. The National Green Hydrogen Mission that the Government of India has set up has laid out a path. So it proposes to set up large solar power based power generation capacity, coupled to which will be the hydrogen generation, electrolysis of water capacity. Currently the technology for solar power generation is available and only the efforts are required to be done. The growth in solar power is actually significant. It outpaces the 6% growth that the Indian economy is having. So that's, I think, which is quite a bit takes us to satisfactory level. But the hydrogen side movement is not very significant. There is a lack of confidence. There is a need for technology. There is a need for provenness of some hydrogen generation facilities like this available. Also, electrolysis by itself is not a new field. You can electrolyze and can break water into hydrogen and oxygen. But to do it on a large scale and handle that oxygen, transport that oxygen through pipelines, through tankers, through various means, that is something which is still, let's say, not giving the confidence that we have learnt it and we have mastered it, etc. That's where the bottleneck lies in the hydrogen generation. But I'm sure in a matter of next 10 years, this will get sorted out. And once it gets sorted out, we will have the power plants ready, solar power plants ready. Just try to put up hydrogen manufacturing plants and then deliver hydrogen to the required levels.
Okay, we have one question here from the audience.
Yes.
So India is adding a lot of steelmaking capacity over the next years. I think that's clear. Investment decisions have been made.
Yes.
Will that be consumed entirely in India, or also do you see some producers looking to export? And if they export, could Europe be an export region? And if so, I think the question is around CBAM. Is that something that Indian steel mills paying attention to?
Yes. I think it was safe to assume for a person like me that not every Indian manufacturer will be able to export steel to Europe. The export responsibility to Europe will probably come on the shoulders of Tata Steel or JSW or such plants only. And they are making significant amount of efforts to decarbonize themselves. Actually, they assume leadership of steel making in India, and therefore they feel that they are responsible to not only decarbonize themselves, but to also show the way to the other steel manufacturers in India how to decarbonize it. And the investments are R&D efforts, investments by these plants are actually taking shape. So Tata Steel's Kalinganagar plant, JSW's new JSW Utkal facility will be looking at significant reduction in the carbon dioxide emission, and therefore they will be entitled to sort of export their steel to Europe, actually speaking. And you'll have no difficulty importing from these plants, yes.
Okay, so we're getting ready for some
Yes.
progressive Indian steel manufacturers also
Yes,
looking
yes.
at the export markets
Yes.
in the future. So we have time for maybe one final question. Then maybe we'll look at the one in the middle here around China. So do you feel that there's a competition between Chinese and Indian manufacturers? How is India staying competitive?
No, there is actually. Only last year, in fact, it's even continuing also now. The Chinese overcapacity, the easiest market for them is actually India, not as much as Europe or US. The easiest market is in India. And a lot of material is coming into Indian market through Vietnam, through Cambodia, through Malaysia. The Chinese steel is finding its way into India. So Indian government currently has put duties to sort of prevent this particular flow. Why the duties were essential? Because the profitability of Indian steel manufacturers dipped almost by 20%, actually speaking. They were operating EBITDA in India is about 23-24% because of the own raw materials, etc. So the EBITDA margins slipped less than 5%, and the potential or ability of the steel companies to generate their own money and reinvest in additional capacity was actually getting threatened. And therefore, the government of India had to act. And now this is the current action. But the question is valid. So any point in time, we will always be threatened by the overcapacity in China in terms of the prices, etc. And the Chinese exports, not that Chinese plants are, all Chinese plants are running very well. There are some of course are running very well. But the people who normally try and export to India, they are not necessarily the best of plants in China. So therefore, those exports need to be curtailed. We are not, let us say, acting against the decarbonization activity in preventing Chinese imports to come into India. So that's the way the picture has been looked at. Right.
Thank you very much
My
for
pleasure.
these insights into the Indian steel market. Please give a round of applause for Mr. Deshpande.
My pleasure.
Thank you for coming all the way from India to give us this presentation and these insights.
My pleasure.
It's very much appreciated.
Yeah, and I like the conference, the way you organized it, and I felt personally very, you can say, awarded by having to come here. Thank you
Very
very much.
good. Thank you very much.